everyone. Welcome to Sunday Spotlight, episode 5. Sorry we couldn't see it last week. Dramas, work called. Apologies. With me, Sizzle.
Hello.
And our guest, the great NS Kane.
Hi.
How goes it?
Yeah, good. How are you guys?
I'm great.
Good, thanks.
That's good.
We're just riding out this heat wave at the moment, but that's not
I
your
know.
problem.
I was about to say that music was so chill. I feel like I should have a coffee in my hand or something like that, but it's so hot. I'm like, well, no, thanks.
That's the vibe we go for here. Just nice, relaxed,
Let's chill.
jazz club style.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, what are you famous for? What's your role in the comic world?
Famous. Oh, you're too sweet. Basically, I've just been writing comics for the last 7 and a bit years. Taken a while to sort of get to this point, but mostly the comic book writer and sort of creator of a bunch of series. Started off as just a writer, but as it progressed on, I became sort of more the main creator, marketing director, publisher, everything else that goes with the title of it. But I've got series like the Hell Courtesan, which is our big one at the moment with Marcosia Comics. And then we've got a few more series, which is stuff like Fox and Hound, and we have Queen Bee. And then we've got another one, which is Your Highness, which is coming 2024.
Very busy, very cool.
I need to be more busy.
Well, it's cool for us.
Oh, thank you.
Let's do some quick fire warm-up questions.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite color?
Black.
What are you reading / collecting at the moment?
Collecting would be Legend of Zelda stuff, as you can probably see in the background.
Excellent. Good call.
I don't know why. I just went on an absolute binge of it again. I don't know, probably because the new game's coming out in May. It just re-sparked everything. And I'm like, I have to get everything again.
It's good to let off steam that way. It's fun.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Now I can go and find it all again.
Last song you listened to?
That would be Maximize by Anna Mathy.
Ooh, good choice. Day or night?
Night. 100% night. I am not a day person.
Summer or winter?
Winter. 100% winter. I hate summer.
Favorite drink?
Favorite drink would be coffee.
Yeah,
Always like a good coffee.
Very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite or least favorite thing to write for or about?
Romance. That is the one thing. And I unfortunately write it so well, and I hate doing it.
We get romance a lot.
I'm just like, God damn it. But, when the occasion calls for it, I'll do it.
Well, that's the sign of a good writer.
Yeah, that's it. You either work or you don't work. So.
All right, let's get into the meat of it. Have you always been creative?
Yeah. Ever since I was young, I've always been creative. So I liked doing fine arts as a kid. I liked doing painting and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, when I was in school, I wasn't as good as the other kids. So that kind of went by the wayside. So I started doing photography, which then kind of led me back into fine arts. So I did fine arts when I walked out of school because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then it sort of always just was in the background. Then I found cosplaying, which was sort of art onto itself, basically making costumes and whatnot. So I incorporated the artistic skill from paper to actual people. And then from there, after that kind of fell apart, I went, well, what am I going to do? Where is the next step? And accidentally stumbled into comics.
Awesome. Were you a comic reader at all before you stumbled into them?
Absolutely not. No,
okay.
Not at all. It was a pure accident. So we were looking for something to cosplay, and we found Batwoman, and she was because we put in the parameters red and black, basically, and female. Yeah. And then started looking into her history, and it was an incredible story. And then I just literally grabbed everything I could that was Batwoman. And then I found Greg Rucka, and then after that, I was just like, this is amazing. And then I looked at his transcripts in one of the back of the books, and I thought, hang on, I can do this. I can write this. This isn't hard. I can do this. So then I started doing a lot of research and sort of looking into different types of script writing and how other writers Gail Simone and Neil Gaiman and stuff like that, trying to look at what their breakdowns looked like. And everybody was different. Everybody that I looked at was completely different. And I thought, well, it's not really a solid format to go on. So I made my own.
Awesome.
Cool.
That's cool. Do you recall the moment where you sort of went from creating just for fun, something to do, to thinking, I've got a knack for this, I want to develop this project?
Yeah. So basically, it went from just doing little bits and pieces. So I think the first thing I ever did was Clockwork, which is like a little 10-page thing. And I was doing all these little 10-page one-shots. And I went, okay, this is cute, but it's not really doing any good. So I moved to the first series I did, which was Nothing Man, which is where Fox and Hound came from. But as I started doing Nothing Man, I went, you know what, I can actually do this. This is a legitimate thing. And then when I was talking to Nicola Scott a couple of times, I know her origin story off the top of my head. Yeah. And I thought, you can do this. She's living proof that you can do this. So that's that moment where I thought, okay, I'm going to continue on with this series. Unfortunately, the series fell through and me and the artist split ways. But out of that came Fox and Hound. And for me, I was much more grateful to have that series and run with that series on my own than continue on. So, and that's, because of that, I found Chris, who I work with all the time now. And then we've just elevated that even further. And then my first real moment was when the Hell Courtesan got picked up by the Marcosia, and we were just like, okay, this is real. We're actually doing this for real now.
Yeah. That's always very exciting.
Oh, yeah. The first moment we got nominated for the Ledger Awards, we pretty much just, we were just like teenagers jumping around the room. So
that's great. I plan to do the same one day. Have you got any formal training at all?
Absolutely not. I was writing novels when I was a kid. I actually found one a couple of years ago while I was sifting through all my stuff. Oh, God, it's terrible. You're reading back on it. You're like, oh, no, I never want to read this again. This needs to get
What's
burned.
That one about?
Teenage angsty vampires. It was just terrible. And I was like, absolutely not. There were some good moments in it, but you can see the crux of that. I had the passion to write. I just didn't have the patience to try and find out the technical and formatting stuff about it. And I think that's really important. If you're going to do something, you need to sort of go back and find the background of how to do it instead of just leaping into it and going, oh, I can do this. So
definitely.
Yeah. That was sort of how I did it. And now I've been sort of watching a lot of YouTubes. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of interviews with a lot of writers. I talk to a lot of writers and I get their opinions. And I'm always asking artists to sort of read my scripts and read over my work and see what can be changed or edited, or this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't look right, So it's all just a process of elimination, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Really absorbing as much as you can. It's definitely something I can relate to.
And then people who do have the training, yes, it's better, but this is something that you can do without formal training and still excel at it.
Absolutely. So if you had to, how would you define creativity or a creative person? Would you say there's requirements, or what's the most important factor?
I think the most important aspect is you're passionate about the work. If you're not passionate about it and you don't want to put the time and effort into it, it's not going to work. So I have a full-time job. I'm tired and exhausted from the full-time job, but I still try to find time to do this. And it's not a chore of, oh my God, I have to do this every day or something like that. It is I want to do this. I will spend my free time where I could be watching a movie or sitting on the couch playing games. No, I want to do this. So I think that's the drive you have to be a creative person, because it's a really hard field to get into and then stay into, because for the first at least 5 to 10 years you're not making any money. So if you're doing this for the money, you're in the wrong field.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important, that people should really love it and be in it for the characters and seeing the creation come to life at the end of the day more than, the dollar figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have spoken to people who say they're aspiring writers, but feel slighted that they can't do any writing because they haven't got a new laptop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I think every time is, you're not a writer. You want to seem like a writer.
Yeah. You can handwrite it and then go to the library and type it up and print it out. It's
a lot of options available to you. You phone it in and say, well, I guess I can't be a writer then.
Like, people use their phones to write stuff down now. I think I've got like 1 billion notes in my phone.
So we touched on it before with Greg Rucka and Neil Gaiman. Are they your main influences, or?
Look, Greg Rucka's, he's probably my fave. I do have a couple of other ones, like Michael Allen Nielsen, who did the Hexed books. I call these my Bibles, and I will always go back to them when I'm doing work, and I will always reference them. His work, and then Dan Mora's artwork that complements it, is just perfection. And it's the same with the series in Low. Unfortunately, I can't pronounce the artist and the writer's names, but I think it's Greg Tetchery. I'm probably saying it wrong, but their work is just such a standard that I aspire to keep my standard to, even though I'm not famous or anything like that, and I'm not with DC or Image. It is good to sort of go, okay, this is what I want for my work in every way and in every title. Doesn't just mean like my big graphic novels. This could mean my smaller pieces or an anthology piece or anything like that. So they're definitely my big faves. And then, of course, Nicola Scott. She's just a legend in every sense, and not only with just her art, but the way she takes a script and can see the page is incredible. And it's not just I'm going to draw panel by panel. It's like an artwork of itself. So I do aspire to be more like them, but I think my work is interesting enough on its own that hopefully one day it will be its own little genre or bubble that people will go, that's a Kane work. That's a Kane work,
I have every faith it will. So when you're writing, do you start with just stream of consciousness? Is it a bunch of notes, or do you start quite structured?
No. So usually I'll be sitting there at like 2:00 in the morning and I'll get this idea that's just popped into my head. So I had one the other day where I was watching some YouTubes on A5 grade Wagyu beef, because that seems to be the thing that everybody wants to cook with nowadays. And I don't see the point in it, because I just think it's fatty meat, but that's my opinion. I'm the person who orders their steak well done, so, I can't comment here. But I was looking at these videos and I thought, oh my God, this is the process of how they make it and then prepare it and everything like that is just insane. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if a serial killer sort of did the same thing? And then I just went, crap. It's 2:00 in the morning. I got to get this idea out of my head. Otherwise, it's going to stay there. So I'm writing it in my phone, and then it'll be like, a couple of plot points, maybe some dialogue sentences, and then I'll put it away and I'll come back to it and I'll go, I had that brilliant idea. Then what I'll do is I'll do a bit of my research. So I'll just, type in whatever I think is pertinent to the idea. And then I'll sort of go down this rabbit hole, which is what happened with Queen Bee. I was watching beekeeping videos online, and it was removing a queen bee from a hive. And just, for some reason, the French Revolution just popped into my head. And I thought, wouldn't that be an interesting smash to remove a queen from her royal position the same way that you would remove the bee, basically. And then the same effect would happen, that the pheromones would go and that you'd need to replace it. Otherwise, the hive would die. And, and then I started researching bees. I started researching the French Revolution. And then I started to get my notes together. And then I do like a weird little plot point structure so I can move things. So if something's a really good idea and I like it, I'll highlight it. But it might not sit at the beginning of the novel. It might sit towards the end or the middle somewhere. So I'll go, okay, I like that point, but I feel like it's too early to divulge that information. Let's move it down here. And then I'll play with that sort of skeleton for a while until I'm happy with it. Then I'll put what I call the muscles in, which is the dialogue, and then I'll transfer it into the actual script format and mess with it again. So
That's really cool.
Sometimes it takes me a couple of hours. Sometimes it'll take me months. Just depends on how quickly the project will come to me.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting process, and I do enjoy it because sometimes you'll be working on something and you'll feel like it's not quite right, and then you can go, okay, I'm going to come back to that later, and you still got all your information there, and you can just fiddle with it again. And you're not moving an entire script, which is really difficult to do. Once it's in script form, it's harder to move.
It is.
Makes sense.
Mm.
Is that when most of your ideas come to you in the middle of the night? We get that a lot.
Unfortunately. But I'll have an idea wherever. Like I'll be sitting out to dinner with friends or something like that, and somebody will say something, and I'm like, hang on, say that again. I have to write that down. You know?
Yeah.
So
that ping goes off.
Yeah. So I've
something in that.
In my phone, so I can refer back to it later, and basically I can just pull those ideas. I've got an idea sheet on my computer that I update regularly with just plot points, and I'll go, can be expanded on, or maybe needs some work or something like that, just so I've got notes for myself. And then I've got other projects which I've sort of done the skeleton for and just left because it's not the right time that I should be working on that project. Like you feel like something's missing, or you need to do some more research or something like that. So,
but it's always good to have that kernel sort of locked away.
Yeah, and if artists approach me for work or something like that, I can go, oh, this is what I've got sitting here ready to go. Have a read of it and see what you think. That way that they've got a bit of a choice. It's not just, oh, this is my next project. Here, you get this.
So tell me about your workspace. Are we seeing it now? Is that do you do your writing sort of anywhere, everywhere? Or?
I try and do it at a desk, but mostly I'm just sitting on the couch because I'm lazy and I need comfortable stuff. I need my back to be supported. Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting there hunched over a desk for the next 6 hours and be like, oh God, my back is killing me. This is just the display that we've got set up in the house at the moment. Next to that is my actual workstation because I work from home. So, normal desk is there. And then, the laptop pretty much goes everywhere with me. That's the beauty of having one, is that I don't get tied down to anywhere. I can write in my bedroom. I can write in the lounge room. I could write at the dining table, pretty much wherever. So
that's cool.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really good. I think it's easier that way. And, I just changed over my hard drive recently because it was every time I plugged it in, it would unplug itself, which is super annoying. So now I've got a bit of more heavy duty one, thank God. So,
so when you're sitting down for a writing session, it seems like you're sort of ready to go writing at any time, but do you ever struggle to get into the creative space? Do you have little tips or little habits to get into the flow?
I think if you're going to sit down and do it, you have to know what you're going to be working on. So you have to have been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah.
You can't just sort of go, oh, I need to finish this today. You're not there. Also, I use music. Music's a huge influence on me. Generally, I have something smashing away in the headphones just to block out literally everything so I can't hear anything while I'm doing this. Yeah. And then I can get into that zone. Because stuff like, Fox and Hound, you have to be in the right mood to write it. If you're having a bad day or you're not feeling up for it, you're not going to get those witty little nuances that they make. You're going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, oh, I feel like crap. This doesn't sound right,
Yeah.
And I usually have the Bayonetta soundtrack when I'm writing them because it just, I don't know, it just puts me in that mood where, that sassy kind of way that they talk. So, yeah, most pieces do have their own soundtracks that I listen to.
That's really cool.
That's cool. You should post them. That'd be nice to see.
That's not a bad idea, actually. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I've got some, more melancholy ones for the darker works, and then I've got the pumpy, upbeat ones. And then, I was writing a cyberpunk piece for a little anthology, so I had, synth stuff on and just trying to get my head in that space.
That's cool. I do something similar when I'm writing foes. If I'm writing for each of the, I'll have heavy metal, and then I'll have something orchestral and moody to get the two
Mm-hmm.
characters, the dichotomy going
Yep.
between the
It
two of
really
them.
helps. It really
Create
does
that
help.
juxtaposition. It really does, and like just the practicalness of drowning out the background as well is
Yeah,
really important.
I had the TV on at one point, and it was too distracting. Like
Yeah.
it just didn't work. So yeah, ended up switching to music, and it's been pretty good.
I'm always telling friends they can't recommend me new shows if I'm in a drawing phase because I can't draw and have a new show on.
Nope.
It has to be a
Nope.
show I can ignore or nothing.
That's it. That's it. Like if you've got something that you've watched a bazillion times in the background and you just need it for noise, fair enough. But if you're going to get
Yeah.
distracted by that, you got to turn it off.
That's good. It's not just me. Excellent. So how would you describe your style of writing to people?
Okay, so I prefer horror. I'm
Yeah.
a big horror fan. Haven't got the chance to really edge out into that yet, which is annoying, but we'll get there. But my style is more or less taking sort of an old story or a folk tale and bringing it into the forefront of this age. So with Hell Courtesan, we did that. We took a really old story that a lot of people didn't know about, and we reformatted it for this modern era with the comic. So it still had that authentic feel to it, but we just gave it a bit of a new life in the graphic novel format. And then we're doing the same sort of thing with Your Highness, which is a really old folktale that people don't really know about. Like when I say it to people, they're like, what the hell's that? And I'm bringing it into that modern perspective. So that's what I like. I like doing that. It just
Very cool.
gives me a chance to play with something that I've loved, like especially, so Your Highness is based on the Diamonds and Toads story. And I've loved that sort of little folk tale since I was a kid. I actually have the original book of it since I was a kid. My mum actually found it a couple of years ago. And I thought, giving this a new lease and a new, basically, sort of storyline that I can then fabricate is really interesting. And I can manipulate this to what I want. It doesn't have to be the same story, Like you can tell the story of Beauty and the Beast 1,000 times, but if you put your spin on it, it's still different.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's something a little bit different. And I do have original works and whatnot that I've made up completely from scratch and stuff like that. But I really enjoy these ones. And I think it gives these old stories a new breath of life.
Yeah. So how do you go about finding your character's voice when writing it? Do you read it back to yourself? Do you have maybe a famous voice that you sort of compare it to, or?
Sometimes I kind of imagine who would play them in real life, or I would kind of think about who would play them. But I mostly try and find what the core of the character is, who they are on the inside and what they project on the outside. So like example was Jingoku. There's not a lot known about her. There's a lot of artworks and stuff like that, but there's not a lot of written script. So when I started researching it, I thought, okay, this woman was obviously seduced by the devil. She's very vain. She's very jealous, envious of other people. So I kind of gave her that projection, and she's very almost cruel and strong at the same time, but it comes off wrong. And then, of course, when she softens up in the book, you have to change that, but still keep what she would say, like it in her voice. Yeah, so that's how I sort of go about finding the characters. Like some of the characters that I've got coming up, some of them are really mean and tough and have that, sassy exterior, but some of them are really quiet. I've got one character that doesn't speak at all. So her facial expressions have to tell her story, and I have to be very expressive when I write the facial expressions. So you actually understand, like, that subtle frown is not I'm sad, it is I'm scared. So yeah, I like playing with them, and I like giving them a bit more of a darker personality than necessary, which is the opposite to Fox and Hound, where they're just saucy and cheeky. But that's their characters. So
do you find you have to adjust your script writing style for different artists?
yes. Yeah. Some artists need a lot more dialogue, especially in the sort of explaining of the panels.
Yeah.
Some of them are like when I tell them where the panels should be and in what order they should be in, like, this is the top left or this is the bottom right, something like that. Some artists don't really mind and they just sort of do it themselves. And then we've got ones that I can pretty much just write almost nothing in and they make the page up the way that they feel it should be. And then we check it over and whatnot after that. But yeah, most people I write with are always different. And you have to tailor that too.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting. And, you know, artists will tell you too. They're just like, I don't understand what you mean by this point. I don't understand, you know, where this should be. Oh, maybe this panel should be below this one and this one should be above. And that's all part of their creating process too, which is great.
It's a great way to open up that back and forth too. You know, you can share more ideas, collaborate a bit more, and
yeah. And if they're not like looking at your work as strongly as you are, then they're not really passionate about the project either. They don't want to see it do the best that it can do.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's better that way. You know, it's not a criticism. It's just helping.
Absolutely. So what do you find hinders you the most when it comes to writing?
Dialogue. I get really stuck on dialogue really quickly. Sometimes it just comes out.
That's surprising because it reads very naturally, your dialogue.
No. I will go back over dialogue about twice as much as I will go over the panels because I just want to get it right. And sometimes when they say something, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, okay, I know what they're saying because I'm the person who created this, but the reader doesn't. So I have to make sure that I get that point across and I'm not being too vague, you know, reading between the lines sort of thing. But I don't want to be too obvious either. So it's getting that really nice balance where you can sort of help the reader understand what the character is saying too.
Yeah.
And then there are times where they're just flat out blunt. You know, there's no beating around the bush what they just said. So, yeah, it does test me, especially when I've got a really important scene, something like where there's a secret being shared or something's being hidden that's going to come up later. I don't want to give it away, but I want to give them enough that they're going to understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really try and make sure that the dialogue is spot on because that's what you're reading at the end of the day. You're not reading the images. You're reading the dialogue. The images are just complementing what you're reading.
Yeah, that's very true. Do you have any little rituals or superstitions before you write? Some people have to clean down their desk. Some people have to have their pencils lined up.
The one thing that I would mostly do is have a coffee. That would be the big one. Caffeine, I just need it.
Yes, I'm with that one.
Yeah, mostly it's just preparing to write, like wanting to sit down and actually do the work and not get distracted by everything else. I think that's the really important thing when I actually sit down to do it because I just get procrastinating really quickly, and I don't think that's the best thing to do. But I usually try and print out the work so I've got it in front of me. It's actually tangible, and I'm usually going through that, even if it's just the plot points. I usually go through that, highlight that, scribble notes all over it first. And I'll do that for about a week and a half before I actually even sit down to really write anything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm a bit of an old school sort of have to print it out person sometimes.
I'm the same. I get to a point where I need it printed before I can really go on.
Yeah. And then I'm just like stuck with a pile of paper and I'm like, oh, where'd this pile of paper go? Now I have to shred it. This is annoying.
So you mentioned your laptop. Are there any other must-have tools you carry with you in your little arsenal?
Definitely headphones, mouse. I can't keep scrolling over the pad. It just annoys me. I've always got a hard drive plugged in because sometimes I'll reference a picture or something like that and it's all saved on the hard drive. So it's like it's like my database really of everything. And then, like I said, I've usually got one of my books sitting next to me just as a reminder if I need to flick through or if I'm stuck at a particular point. It's like, you know, what did they do at this point? Where was the story at this point? Because I think that's one of the hard things to do as well, is if you're writing something quite long, you need to remember what the core of the story is. You can't just keep waffling as it goes along. There has to be a purpose to this whole arc, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like to keep them next to me to go, okay, you know, we're at issue 5. Where were they at issue 5? Have they revealed this much of the story? Have they not? You know, and then I can sort of gauge where my story is at.
That's really cool. I like that.
That is cool.
Yeah, I try to keep them with me at all time, and I've got them like sitting on the shelf in that order as well. So I just pick up the chunk and walk off with it.
I do something similar. I tend to do a lot of writing at the library if I get stuck here because my room's too distracting. All my cool stuff's here.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go to the library, there's always 1 or 2 comics that I know they've got that I have to have just near me, like a weird little pet almost.
Yeah. Well, that's why.
Well, they wouldn't stop. Keep writing.
That's it. Well, that's the other thing too, is, you know, a lot of people write in cafes and stuff like that where they don't have that distraction of their stuff around, that it's just other people coming and going, and, you know, the constant supply of caffeine. But I've written in a cafe a few times. You know, I've just been sitting there and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to sit here for the day and just, you know, order myself a nice lunch and do some work because it's just too distracting. I'm hoping to have like a really nice balcony where I can just sit outside when it gets a bit cooler and just write with a cup of tea and just ignore everything, really.
Environment is definitely important.
It really is. It really is. I think if you've got too many distracting things with you, and that can be sometimes the problem with the laptop, you know, if you've got Facebook on another tab or something like that, you're just like, oh, I'll just sit there and scroll on that for a while. It's like, no, you can't do that. So
who would be the dream team for you to work with? Like, do you have really high aspirations? Who would you love to work with?
Oh, look, I would. Like, getting into Image is where the boat is headed. That's the end goal. DC would be cherry on the cake.
Yeah.
But like the ultimate dream is to write Batwoman at some point.
Cool.
Don't know if it's ever going to happen, but it would be an absolute honor and a privilege. And I would probably say to them, you don't even have to pay me. I'll do it for free. You know, I just want to write this story. But yeah, Image would be the dream at the moment. Working with Nicole would just be incredible. I think that would just be, again, you don't even have to pay me. I'll write you whatever you want, you know, sort of thing. I would love to work with Dan Mora. I would love to also work with, what's his name now? These artists are going to kill me later when they talk to me. The guy who did Black Murder Mondays. He's the I'll have to Google it for you in a second. He's the artist from that one. Babe, can you Google the Black Murder? Oh, just give me the book. It's in my room. She just hands me the phone. Here we go. This is why I do Google. But definitely Dan Mora. His work is phenomenal. Black Murder Mondays. If you guys haven't read this book, just go read it immediately. It's
will do.
One of the best comics that I've ever read.
Oh, cool.
Tom Croker. Thank you.
Awesome.
His artwork is all black and white, and it's so detailed for black and white. It's crazy. Like, I love it. I just absolutely loved it when I first read it. Also, the artist for Low was one of my all-time favorites as well. Again, I'll probably pronounce his name wrong. Greg Tocchini. Just go read the comic book Low, and you'll see his artwork, and it's absolutely stellar. Like, it's not even a comic book. It's just every page is art, which is just incredible. Like, and I showed Chris once the artwork, and what he's done with his artwork now is on that par. It's so good. And I think that's where artists should be looking now, that comic books are not just, here's a panel, here's a panel, here's a panel, here's a panel, here's a splash page. It has to be art now. It's so visually conceptual, and especially what Image does with their books, they're all visually conceptual, which is incredible. It's not just a normal comic book anymore. And even with DC, like, look, if you look at the Black Label series, the way that they did the artwork for the Black Label series was mind-blowing for DC.
Some really great stuff there.
Exactly. So I think that artists are now thinking in a different direction. I think they're thinking that comic books can be a bit more. So yeah, it's amazing. Hello.
Hey, Spedgy. So what advice do you give to any aspiring writers who are watching?
When people approach me at the conventions and things like that, I generally tell them to stick with it. Like, if you're really passionate about this and you love it, again, don't expect to be paid in the next however many years, because it's not happening. You're going to pretty much be sinking money into this before you get paid. But do it for the love of it, because you want to bring these characters to life. I feel like I literally breathe air into their souls when I create these characters, and they become like children to me, basically, because I've created them and they exist now. It's not a physical existence, it's on a page, but they still exist.
Yeah.
So definitely just keep sticking to it. Keep learning things. Don't ever stop learning things. Talk to people. I find that the more you talk to people, the more you're going to learn. And just never let that spark go out, because a lot of creators, they get defeated by not getting recognized or not being able to find somebody to work with or something like that. It's fine. It happens, but don't let that spark go out. Like, keep writing in the background, keep doing your work, keep improving on your work. And then finally somebody will go, hey, I want to work with you.
Yeah.
Also anthologies. Work on anthologies.
Good evening, Gary. Hello. Well, everyone's coming on now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where were you people? I mean, thank you. Well, we're nearly at an end here. So one last question for you.
Sure.
What is the best criticism or best piece of encouragement you've ever gotten?
Best criticism would be from Chris. He wonderfully criticizes my work in the best of ways, because it's not a criticism where it's mean. It's a criticism that I wouldn't have picked it up. And I can tell you, as somebody who's reread their scripts like 1,001 times by this point, you're gonna not notice stuff, and you need that second pair of eyes to look at it and go, oh my God, you have made a giant mistake there. Especially when we were doing the Hell Courtesan. Like, all the Japanese stuff, I stuffed up so many times, and Chris was there, first one picking it up, going, that's not right. So yeah, it's probably the best criticism I've ever received, because it's actually helped. And then, of course, the best thing encouragement we've received was getting that Ledger nomination, because getting to that point makes you want to go further. It goes, right, I've been recognized. Chris is a national treasure.
He is. Like Crispy Inks, I believe is his.
It's Crispy. Yeah. That he, like, when we got that, it just felt like we had really achieved something and we'd been noticed for the first time. And this was before we got the publication and everything like that. It was like that first sort of step in the doorway to go, right, people have seen it, they liked it, they want more. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but we're pretty happy with how it's going. And even though it's slow, doesn't mean you're not going to get there in the end.
Very true. That's fantastic. Anything you want to plug?
What have I got coming up? I'm trying to think. We've got the next issue of Fox and Hound going to be coming up soon. Chris is actually working on that right now. I delivered script 5 to him not long ago, and I've got script 6 in the works. So we're hoping to get that finished maybe this year. Get the whole thing done. That's going to be a huge shebang when we sort of finish this arc and close up this sort of first trade. So we'll be putting all 6 issues into the trade, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe beginning of 2024. And then we'll be moving on to the next arc of that story. So this story is definitely continuing. Chris and I love doing it, so we're happy to be on board with that. I have got a few more things in the works with him. We've been discussing some stuff, so hopefully we'll get to announce that in the next few months when he's finished moving into his new place. And yeah, hopefully next year's going to be pretty big. Hopefully I'll get down to Melbourne this time. Maybe up to the Gold Coast. I'm not 100% sure yet. Definitely doing all the Sydney shows, so I'll be there as usual. But
Sweet.
Yeah, hopefully to get a bit more around Australia now that everything's sort of, calmed down with COVID and everything. Hoping to do those interstate conventions again.
That's great. That's really exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for having a chat. It's been very enlightening.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was absolutely wonderful.
Absolute pleasure. And we like to end with a quote here at Sunday Spotlight. I can't remember the quote, so this will be interesting for everyone. Ordinary life is pretty complex stuff. Harvey Pico from American Splendor fame. Very true.
Very true.
Don't dismiss the little things.
That's it.
Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for your
guys.
comments. And we'll catch you all next week. We're not sure who we're going to have on yet, but we'll be here. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll be here. And just remember, like and subscribe.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Always
Thank you,
gotta come
everyone.
back.
Have a good night.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
See you next
Thanks,
week.
everyone.
Thank you, Nicole.
This show is sponsored by the ComX Shop.